January, 49 BC. The air is cold enough to steal the breath from your lungs. On the banks of a shallow, insignificant river in northern Italy, a man stares into the dark, churning water. The moonlight paints a silver edge on the standards of the 13th Legion, his men, who wait in disciplined silence. This man is Gaius Julius Caesar. He is a hero to the people, a conqueror, the most famous man in Rome, and he is about to become its greatest traitor. This river, the Rubicon, is more than just water and stone. It is a line in the sand drawn by the Roman Senate. To cross it with an army is an act of war. It is a decision from which there is no return. History tells us what happened. He crossed. He plunged the Republic into a bloody civil war, and from its ashes, an empire would rise. But history often glosses over the most important question. Why? What was the secret that pushed this brilliant, calculating man to risk everything on a single, desperate gamble? The answer is not as simple as ambition. It's a story of fear, betrayal, and the hidden machinery of power. To understand the secret of the Rubicon, we can't start at the river. We must start in the heart of Rome itself. The Roman Republic, for all its glory, was rotting from the inside. It was a playground for a small group of immensely wealthy, aristocratic senators who called themselves the Optimates, or the best men. And they hated Julius Caesar. They feared him. For 8 years, Caesar had been in Gaul, fighting a brutal but spectacularly successful campaign. He had conquered vast territories, brought immense wealth back to Rome, and earned the undying loyalty of his legions. To the common people, he was a demigod. To the Optimates, he was a threat to their established order. Their leader was a man who had once been Caesar's greatest ally, and even his son-in-law, Pompey the Great. But now, jealousy and political maneuvering had turned them into bitter rivals. The Senate, with Pompey's backing, cooked up a brilliant, venomous plan. They passed a decree. Caesar must disband his army and return to Rome as a private citizen. Only then could he legally run for consul, the highest office in the Republic. It sounded reasonable. It was, in fact, a death sentence. Here is the first part of the Rubicon secret. It was a trap. Without his legions, Caesar would be defenseless. His enemies in the Senate had already drawn up lists of crimes they intended to prosecute him for. Corruption, illegal warfare, you name it. They would strip him of his wealth, his reputation, and his life. He had been checkmated, or so they thought. Now, we must look inside the mind of Caesar himself. We see him as a marble bust, a stoic figure of legend. But he was a man with colossal ambition, yes, but also with colossal debts. His early political career had been funded by borrowed money. Without the protection of a high office, his creditors would descend like vultures. Ruin was a very real possibility. But more than that, he felt a profound sense of injustice. He had served Rome, bled for it. He had expanded its borders and filled its treasury. And his reward? To be treated like a common criminal by lesser men who had sat in their marble villas while he slept in the mud with his soldiers. And then there were his men, the legionaries. They weren't just an army, they were his family. They had fought with him, starved with him, and triumphed with him for nearly a decade. Their loyalty was to him, not to the faceless Senate. If he abandoned them, he would be betraying the only people he truly trusted. So, this is the second secret of the Rubicon. It wasn't just a political calculation. It was personal. He was cornered. His choices were humiliation, poverty, and probable death on one side, or treason on the other. He was fighting not just for power, but for his honor, his future, and his very survival. Which brings us back to the riverbank. The cold January night. His generals are gathered. They debate. They weigh the options. Some urge caution. To cross is to unleash chaos upon the Roman world. To start a war where brothers will fight brothers. The ancient historian Suetonius tells us Caesar hesitated. He stood there, gazing across the water, and said to his companions, "Even now, we can still turn back." Imagine the weight of that moment. The future of Western civilization resting on the shoulders of one man, wrestling with his conscience. He knew the cost. He loved Rome. But was the Rome of the Optimates, the corrupt and scheming Senate, the same Rome he loved? Or was he fighting to save the idea of Rome from the men who were strangling it? This was his justification. The silent argument he was making to himself and to history. Legend says that at this moment of profound doubt, a supernatural apparition, a figure of great size, appeared. It snatched a trumpet from one of the soldiers, blew a deafening blast, and strode across the river. Caesar took it as a sign from the gods, a divine endorsement. This story is almost certainly a myth, a bit of propaganda cooked up later, but it reveals a deeper truth. Caesar needed to believe the universe was on his side. He needed to feel that his monumental act of treason was, in fact, an act of destiny. The real secret, the one that happened in the silence of his own mind, was a moment of terrible clarity. The realization that the republic he thought he was serving no longer existed. It had been replaced by a system designed to destroy him. And in that moment, his personal survival and his vision for Rome became one and the same. He turns to his generals. The debate is over. His voice is quiet, but rings with absolute finality. He utters the 5 words that will echo through eternity. Alea Iacta est. The die is cast. It's a gambler's phrase. The point in a game of chance where you have thrown the dice, but they have not yet landed. The outcome is unknown, but the action is irreversible. The order is given. The lead standard-bearer of the 13th Legion takes the first step into the icy water. Then another soldier follows. And another. There are no trumpets, no triumphant shouts. Just the quiet, determined slosh of thousands of men and horses, marching under the moon, leaving the rule of law behind them on the northern bank. They were not just crossing a river. They were crossing a boundary between worlds. Behind them lay the old republic, with its traditions, its laws, and its corrupt senate. Ahead of them lay civil war, uncertainty, and a future that Caesar, and Caesar alone, would now write. The crossing of the Rubicon is one of history's great ironies. The end of the 500-year-old Roman Republic wasn't sealed in a cataclysmic battle. It was sealed by the quiet footsteps of a single legion, wading through a shallow stream on a cold winter's night. The immediate aftermath was panic. When news reached Rome that Caesar had crossed the Rubicon, the optimates, including Pompey, were seized by a terror they had not anticipated. They had expected him to fold. They never believed he would call their bluff. They abandoned the city and fled south, ceding Rome to Caesar without a fight. The civil war would be long and brutal, fought across the entire Mediterranean. But it began here, with this decision. This single act of defiance transformed Julius Caesar from a servant of the state into its master. It set him on the path to becoming a dictator, and after his assassination, paved the way for his heir, Augustus, to become the first Roman emperor. And so, the ultimate secret of the Rubicon is this: it gave us our modern world. The idea of a point of no return is so deeply embedded in our language that we forget where it came from. Every time a leader makes an irreversible decision, they are, metaphorically, crossing the Rubicon. It wasn't an act of pure, naked ambition. It was the desperate act of a man cornered by his enemies, fighting for his life, his honor, and his vision of the future. The die he cast that night landed on a world remade in his own image. The choice was treason or oblivion. And for a man like Caesar, oblivion was never an option.